Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Voltron Red Lion and Lance from Mattel. Voltron has been making a huge comeback this past year, with a new comic book series, a new video game, and even a brand new animated series. The Lion Force is back. And now, Mattel is introducing a new collector's line of action figures based on the characters and their lions as they appeared in the classic animated series. Starting things off with Lance and his Red Lion. Lance and the Red Lion come in the same white mailer box, but are actually individually packaged. Now, I assume this is because initially, Mattel announced that they would be sold separately. But eventually they changed it so that each pilot actually was sold with their appropriate lion. Lance comes in a small square window box showcasing the figure within. To the left of the figure, we're treated to an image of Lance from the classic animated series, along with the Voltron logo up above him, which has a really cool metallic shine to it. The back of the box shows off some features of the figure, as well as the collect and connect blazing sword pieces that come with each of the pilots. The box also lets us know that Lance pilots the Red Lion, which is always a nice reminder since in the original Voltron series, the color of the pilots' outfits did not necessarily match the color of the lions. The Red Lion comes in a larger window box, fully showing the lion figure inside, with a really cool background insert that looks like the inside of the volcano where the Red Lion slumbers. The back of that box shows off some of the Red Lion's features, reminds us that Lance is his pilot, and shows us how the Red Lion will fit in with the other lions in order to form Voltron. Alright, let's go ahead and start off by looking at the Lance action figure. The figure is in the 4-inch scale, which is a scale that Mattel isn't usually known for outside of the DC Infinite Heroes line. But even still, they did a pretty good job of capturing the likeness of the character right out of the cartoon series. It's cool to see little details actually painted, such as the emblem on his chest. The belt features a sculpted blaster in the holster, which is non-removable. I do kind of wish that there was an actual blaster that you can remove, but I must say, at least they put it there to help complete his look. Now, one thing I do need to nitpick on are the small white circles that are on the figure's shoulders. In the cartoon, there were always little white glares on the shoulders and the helmets, but this was merely to show you that the armored pieces of their costumes were clean and shiny. The way the white circles are painted on this figure, perfectly symmetrical, makes it look like they are intended to be part of the actual costume design, which is a bit odd to me. Alright, so let's take a closer look at the Lance action figure. Now, like I said, the 4-inch scale isn't something that Mattel's necessarily known for. They do a great job with their 6-inch and 7-inch figures, and we have seen them hit the 3 3/4-inch, 4-inch scale before with their DC Infinite Heroes line. So let's see how well Mattel was able to handle this new 4-inch action figure in the Voltron line. Now, the articulation on this guy, while I wouldn't say is super articulated or by no means on the same level as something like DC Universe Classics, he does still have a fair amount of articulation going on here. The shoulders are ball jointed, so you can see he's got a wide range of movement in his arms. You can twist them, you can move them around, bring them all the way out to the sides. The elbows actually have a bit of a half ball joint thing going on, so they do bend pretty well, and they actually have a swivel cut, so you can actually rotate his forearms at the right above the elbow joint. There is actually where it turns. Now, there is no wrist articulation at all, so his entire forearm does stay completely still, exactly how it is. So the only articulation you've got is the elbow and the swivel just above the elbow joint. Now, he does have a waist swivel, so you can turn him left and right there. And then the pelvis area is actually pretty good. You can see he's got a wide stance with the legs there, as well as it turns, it swivels up here. It is very similar to something that you would see on DC Universe Classics. It's just kind of shrunk down a little bit, so that's nice. The knees work just like the elbows. They've got a swivel just above the knee joint, and then they move forward and backward. And again, there are no ankle joints, so there's no pivots, no moving forward or backward with the ankles. The foot actually stays completely flat. So you do have to find a pose where you can keep both feet flat on the ground, but it's not that hard. He actually stands pretty good. And for poses that he may need a little assistance with, you do have that key accessory that works as a figure stand. So, like I said, by no means super articulated like DC Universe Classics, but this is quite a bit of an improvement over what Mattel was doing with the Infinite Heroes line. So, actually, I think this works out pretty well. Now, one thing else to show you here is the interchangeable head feature. Now, the articulation on the head is just a simple left and right movement. It's not a ball joint, so you're not going to get any forward, up and down type movement. It's just going left and right. So you can actually just pop that head right off the joint, and you can see this is all one solid piece with the torso. And then you can take the secondary head, pop it right on there. It's nice and tight, holds on very firm. You got some good left and right movement in the articulation, and now you've got yourself a helmeted lance. Having two different heads was a brilliant move on Mattel's part. It was always cool having removable helmets on the vintage figures, don't get me wrong, but they never looked perfectly right when squeezing them over the figure's hair. With the inclusion of the second helmeted head, we can actually display the figure the way he's supposed to look while wearing the helmet, and with his visor down. And then we also have the option of displaying the figure with his awesome 80s cartoon accurate anime haircut that definitely would not have fit under a removable helmet. The figure also includes a large key to his lion, which harkens back to the vintage figures from Panache Place. The key works as a display stand for the figure. It has another function as well though, which I'll show you in just a bit. Now lastly, the figure also includes the handle of the Collect and Connect blazing sword. Once you get all of the pilots, you'll have the full sword to fit in the hands of your fully formed Voltron. Alright, now let's look at what's sure to be the main attraction of this set, the Red Lion. Now, one thing about Voltron toys is that the lions are always designed so that they can transform and fit together in order to form Voltron. While that of course is a great feature, it does usually result in the design of the lion itself getting hurt a little bit, and sometimes not looking as good as the lions actually appeared in the animated series. While there is a little bit of that going on here, I honestly think Mattel Design did a great job of making this look like the Red Lion, while still allowing for the transformation that allows him to become Voltron's right arm. The paint job is a bit basic, but I think it's because these are meant to mimic the more simplistic design from the original cartoon series. This is the reason why there is so much white and gray used on the figure. And that's one thing that honestly threw me off a little bit at first. But I think it's just because I'm used to seeing most of the old Voltron toys that were made with the vac metallized silver parts, and not just this plain white. But again, the whites and the grays used here do make it a bit more cartoon accurate. That whole red and white combo is a bit simplistic, just like the basic colors on the Lance figure, but it still works, and it seems to suit the lion very well. And he does have a touch of silver on his teeth and yellow in his eyes, which I really like and helps the face to really stand out. Now, one thing to note, however, is that he is missing the number 2 that should be on his back. Alright, so let's take a look at how some of the articulation works on the Red Lion. Now, I did just mention that with these actual lion figures, usually they are made so that they can transform to later on form a full Voltron, which this does, and that does sometimes kind of ruin the overall look of the lion figure. Now, Mattel actually did a pretty great job of making the lion look awesome standalone, but there are some parts on here that you can tell are made for the full Voltron that you're just not going to get by. The prime example is the joint right here, which is very obviously Voltron's elbow. The red lion becomes Voltron's right arm, so the white piece in the center here is like a big giant elbow joint. You can see it does articulate, so when this is Voltron's arm, it will be able to move very well. It's got a nice solid clicking to it, so it really locks in place. Which is going to work great for when it's the full Voltron, because then we don't have to worry about any loose joints with that big, enormous figure. But that does also work, for a little bit of articulation with the red lion too, so we can kind of turn him, you can position him in different ways where it looks like he's bent and everything. So that does work out pretty cool. Now, aside from this joint here, we do have articulation in the head, so you can move it left and right, and it's that same clicking, so it's real tight. It doesn't move or fall. It's real tight there. And again, this is going to be Voltron's hand eventually, so it's nice and tight so that he'll be able to hold that blazing sword and you won't have to really worry about his wrist falling limp or anything like that. The mouth is also opening and closing, and you can hear it still doing the click. So all the joints are very tight on this for the most part. Now, where it's going to differ is actually in the legs. Now, the front legs have a little bit more articulation than the back, and I'll show you why. You can actually position the front legs pretty much any way you want to, and you can hear it's got that same click, so they lock in place however you want to position them. And you can kind of bend the elbows a little bit, so if you want to, get them crouching a little bit, you can do that, and then at the wrist on the paw there, it does the same thing. Now, the back legs don't have that same freedom. Mostly it's because they've got this snapback feature, which keeps them from really being able to articulate forward all the way. You can see how it just kind of snaps back. So the only real pose you're going to get out of the back legs is pretty much a straight up and down. You can't bend the knees forward, they can only bend backwards, and again, they've got that snapping thing going on. So really, you're just going to get the straight up and down pose with those back legs. It's not too bad, but you can't really get a lot of big crouching poses out of them because of that. Now, let me show you why there's a snapback feature. The Red Lion does actually feature an action feature on this toy. So let's show how you will transform the lion, first of all, to form the right arm for Voltron. It's actually a very simple transformation. First, there's this piece on the back that just lifts up, and you can just fold the tail right on the inside there. And then the legs all just fold up, and once you fold them up, they should lock right in place, just like that. You can hear it click into place. The legs in the front do the same thing. And then you'll have this extender piece that comes out, which is what's actually going to plug into the black lion. And you've got your arm all ready to go here. And see, we talked about we got that elbow joint there and all that. Now, you saw that I just inadvertently activated one of the action features on there. Basically, the reason for the spring-loaded legs is because it's got an auto transformation. So to turn him from Voltron's arm back into the lion, it's got like a quick change feature. So if you lift up the flap for the tail, you'll notice that it springs back out, so the tail just flips right back out on its own. There's a button on the back side that when you press it, the legs spring down. And then there's another button on the underside that bring the front legs down. So that way he just quickly changes back into lion form. Now, you noticed that the problem I see with that is that when you've got this all transformed and you're playing with, your fully assembled Voltron, it's going to be real easy to accidentally bump those buttons and have the legs fold down. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll really be able to tell if that's going to be an actual issue or not once we can form the full Voltron. Right now I'm just kind of guessing because it's so easy that I just accidentally hit these buttons just while sitting here playing with it and the legs fold down. So on one hand, the action feature is kind of neat and it works really well. On the other hand, I'm not entirely sure we needed that action feature. It seems like if we could have just folded the legs up ourselves and unfolded them ourselves, we would have had a better range of articulation in the legs, and we wouldn't have to worry about the pop-out feature while we're playing with our fully formed Voltron. But I digress. The action feature does still work, and it works pretty well. And overall, the articulation, not so bad on this guy. Seeing the red line in formation of Voltron's right arm gives you an idea of just how big the completed Voltron is going to be. You can also take the hilt of that blazing sword that came with Lance to see how it's going to fit into Voltron's hand. There's a small round port on the inside of the hand that the sword plugs right onto. Now the Red Lion also comes with his own weapon accessory. This bladed piece is made of a really strong, durable plastic. It's got two little nubs in the handle meant for his teeth, so you can set the blade on his bottom teeth and then clamp the mouth closed over it. And he actually holds onto it pretty tight. I didn't have any issues with it falling out while I was flying him around. I think it's awesome that Mattel included these weapons for the Lions because they've often been overlooked in some of the previous toy lines. Now, remember that key that we saw earlier that came with Lance? Here's the fun thing you can do with that. The key is actually used to open the cockpit on the Lion so that you can put your Lance figure inside. Now, you don't need to use the key to open the cockpit. It'll also open up just the same by firmly pressing on the center. But it's still a neat little feature, and there's a certain amount of enjoyment to be had by using the key to actually open up the Lion. Once you get it opened up, the Lance figure can actually sit inside to pilot the Lion. The cockpit inside is detailed with some stickers to help complete the look of the control panels. Alright guys, it's comparison time! Since the Panache Placeline is probably one of the most memorable, let's go ahead and start by comparing to those. Here's a look at the new Lance figure standing alongside his vintage counterpart. You can really see how Mattel did a great job of making this small figure resemble the animated look of the character. I do like how the scale remains about the same. That just seems right for Voltron figures. And just for fun, here he is alongside the Lance figure from the Trendmasters Voltron 3rd Dimension toy line. And yes, Lance wore red in the 3rd Dimension series. Here is the new Mattel Red Lion next to the old Panache Place Red Lion. A huge difference here. Remember earlier when I talked about the overall look of the lines being compromised by the transforming abilities? The vintage Red Lion here is a perfect example of that. Voltron was one of those big, important childhood properties of mine, so I am very happy to see it make its comeback with a brand new line of toys. I think what Mattel is doing here is really cool, and it's obvious that a lot of inspiration was drawn from the vintage Panache Place toy line. I think Mattel made the right call in going that route. The 4-inch scale figures that can actually fit inside their lines just seems like the perfect way to do a Voltron toy line. And what's even cooler is that if you have that vintage Castle of Lions playset or any of the other vintage pieces, these new figures will actually display pretty nicely with them. There's probably not much of a chance we'll get a new Castle of Lions made, so why not use the old one? It's going to be a long year waiting for all 5 lines to come out so that we can finally form Voltron, but man, is it going to be a fun ride. The design of the Red Lion itself may be a tad simplistic, yes, but he is a ton of fun. And that massive Voltron is going to rule the toy shelf, I have no doubt. Mega Thrusters are go on February 15th when the Red Lion and Lance become available only on MattyCollector.com. They are also part of the Club Lion Force subscription. Until next time. What are you doing in my chair? That's my seat. This is my spot. This is where I do stuff. What are you doing?